How you doing, everybody? Welcome home to America's Next Motivator, where we provide information, inspiration, and motivator after motivator after motivator here on America's Next. I have Dutch Martin here with me today. How you doing, Dutch?
I'm doing great, Cedric. Thank you for having me on your show.
For sure. Now, when you and I were communicating, from time to time, I would see Darren Martin, and then sometimes I would see Dutch Martin. Can you explain that?
Okay, well, Darren is my birth name, Darren with a Y, Darryn. However, my late Uncle Virgil was known to the family as Uncle Dutch. I always thought that was a cool nickname, and so after he passed, I just decided to keep that nickname in the family. So feel free to call me Dutch.
Okay, without a doubt. You know, I also think it's important to help carry on the legacies of your family members who may or may not have passed. And just keeping their memory alive, I think that's very important. So I think it's cool that you decided to do that.
For sure.
Hey, can you tell me a little bit about where you're from? Where did you grow up at?
Well, I'm originally from Cleveland, Ohio. Grew up parts of my childhood were in Cleveland, parts were in Birmingham, Alabama. But my formative years, high school years, were in Cleveland. Went to college in Boston University.
Okay.
Graduated in 96, went on to grad school at Carnegie Mellon, graduated from there in 99. I've had a series of jobs over the years. I was a foreign service officer for the State Department for 11 years, then started my own business, done various things. But over the past few years, in addition to my day job, I discovered yoga and public speaking.
Wow.
So I'm a certified yoga instructor. I've been teaching yoga going on 5 years now, part-time in my community. I live here in Northern Virginia, just outside Washington, D.C., and I'm a member of Toastmasters International. For the past several years, I've been competing in the International Speech Contest. I'm also a certified world-class speaking coach. So if anybody needs help on their public speaking or presentation skills, or if you need help in putting together a presentation, I'm your man.
Wow. You've been on an incredible journey. I can tell that right from the outset. And, I'm glad that we have some of your time today, because I'd like to walk through several of those phases of your life that got you to where you are today. Can you talk to me about what the early days of Darren Martin was like? What was an early days? What did it look like?
Well, you know what? I was born in March 20th, 1974. The youngest of 6 children. What's interesting about my story is that I have three older brothers, 2 older brothers, 3 older sisters. But it wasn't until 5 years after my mother passed in 2000, and after my father passed in 2005, that I discovered that the man whom I thought was my father, my older sibling's father, it was in fact not my father, but that I'm actually the product of my mother's extramarital affair.
Wow.
It took me a long time for those words to come out of my mouth, but I realized years ago, I said, you know what? This is my story.
That's
and
right.
Right to tell my story without being ashamed, without fear, guilt, or shame. And once I finally came to grips with that, I said, I'm going to tell my story, because you never know who might be touched by it. So I discovered many years ago that basically I'm the product of my mother's extramarital affair, and that discovery answered a lot of questions regarding my childhood and the way that I was treated and by my older siblings and other members of the family, and I discovered it under some very less than ideal circumstances when our family patriarch passed away. It wasn't a situation where the family said, "You know what, Darren, we've got to tell you something."
Wow.
Was that when he passed away, the family was arguing over his money, even though my parents had been long divorced. And one of my older siblings basically said, "Well, Dutch doesn't deserve any of our father's money since Joe Martin, the family patriarch, since Joe is not even his real father."
How old were you when this occurred?
I was how this happened in 20 I was about 31 years old. I was in my early 30s when I found out.
Wow. So
And,
for your entire life, you thought that this man was your father.
yes, and granted, he really wasn't in my life. He was in and out, that sort of thing. And I mean, my mother was married like 4 times, so
Okay.
it was one of those things, typical. Grew up without a father, blah blah blah. But then I learned the whole story years down the road, and I found out when I was in my early 30s. And by this time, I was married.
Right.
I was a newlywed, and
Wow.
found out the same time that I did.
Did you, so because of the way that you grew up, did you feel like you grew up without a father? Did you feel like you didn't have a consistent father in your life while you were growing up?
I did, but that's how my entire neighborhood was. This is
Hold on, pause. You said that's how your entire neighborhood was?
yes. I mean, I grew up at a time where it was commonplace for kids to grow up in fatherless homes. Now, the thing is, I thought it was normal, but at the same
Why?
time,
Why did you think it was normal? I want you to talk. I want to unpack this. Why did you think that it was normal that you didn't have a father in your life consistently? And why do you think that that was a common thing in your neighborhood? Why are there so many fatherless children in areas like yours and in communities where you happen to grow up?
well, I'll tell you this right now. Look, hindsight being 2020, I'm the product of the post war on poverty programs that LBJ signed into law back in the late 60s
Okay.
that really turned the welfare state from a program that helped widows with children into a federal bureaucracy that basically paid unmarried black women to have children out of wedlock. So I'm a product of that. Grew up on WIC government cheese, that whole thing. It was it's funny because when you're a child growing up under certain circumstances, you just take it as normal.
With certain circumstances like what?
Growing up without a father, growing up in a rather dysfunctional household where there really wasn't a lot of love shown. There
Wow.
was a lot of negativity in the household. I've seen instances where my mother had different men come in and out of the house. I've seen fights between siblings. I've seen actually fights between my an older brother and the man whom I thought was my father, his father. So I've seen some things, but when you're a child, you don't have the adult's mental capacity to process all that. You
Right.
take it in and you stick it back in your subconscious mind, and unfortunately, over during my adult years, I've finally been able to process it and make sense of it. But back,
So
that's just how it was.
so you actually had you had some trauma in your childhood that you had to deal with and that you actually normalized because of how much of it that you saw. And what I'm collecting from what you're saying is that other kids in your neighborhood growing up, they also grew up in fatherless homes in part due to the war on poverty.
Yeah, see, when President LBJ signed the War on Poverty uh, programs back in the late '60s, it basically expanded the welfare state because you have to realize before the '60s, even during segregation, two-parent families in the black community were the norm. The out of wedlock birth rate in the late 60s and early 70s was roughly 20%, which back then was high. Now it's 75%.
Wow.
Because more black women have grown up into that welfare culture to where instead of marrying a decent man who has the potential of being a good husband and father and family man, they decided to marry the government and sleep with as many men as they wanted, have as many children as they wanted, and with each successive child, they got a bigger welfare check every month.
Is that the case?
Truth. Yes,
Wow.
this is an unspoken truth in Black America.
Talk about it.
Something that people talk about because, we're not supposed to air our dirty laundry, but it's something that I lived. I breathed it, and I know how dysfunctional my life was because of it. And all of the things now that I'm teaching my son, and I've been married almost 17 years, and my wife and I have a 9-year-old son. All of the things that I'm teaching my son are the things that I wish I had a father who taught me. So I'm kind of, going day by day. I mean, I had other figures in my life. I had teachers in my life and other male adults who were positive role models, but nothing can take the place of a child's father.
That's right. And you are entitled to your truth, and your truth is welcome here on America's Next Motivator. And what you're talking about is something that I've been a part of conversations regarding before, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with us discussing it today. It's a part of your start, and it's something that we need to talk about. So when you say welfare culture, you're talking about people willingly partaking in welfare. Now, what exactly do you mean by welfare? And you're talking about women or both men and women. Are they both complicit? How's it working out?
Well, yeah, growing up, they were both complicit. Basically, women would the paradigm was like this. A woman would go down to the welfare office and be told, okay, we'll give you X amount of dollars a month if you're a single mother. But here's the thing. We'll give you these welfare benefits, but you cannot have a father in the home. If you have a father in the home, the government is not going to take care of you. So women did a cost benefit analysis, and they realized, you know what? I can have a lot of kids, get more welfare. I don't need a man, but they needed a man to procreate all those children.
Right.
So it was basically a vicious cycle that went on and on. And again, these are the kind of things that, only Black conservatives or right wingers talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm summarily attacked and criticized for airing Black people's dirty laundry. I've been called a sellout and Uncle Tom, so on and so forth. But again, I realized years ago, I said, I need to tell my story. This is my story.
That's right.
I lived it, and as I saw it. So this is the milieu that I grew up in. And I realized years ago, I said, I need to break this cycle. I need to undo the emotional curse that had been plaguing me my entire life. So, number one, I focused on my education. That was the one thing, the greatest gift my mother ever taught me was the importance of an education. So I hit the books all through school. Secondly, I said, before I bring a child into this world, I'm going to be married. Because children in married homes raised by a mother and father do far better in every category, regardless of race, regardless of color, than children who are brought up in single-parent, fatherless homes. So I said, if I bring a child into this world, I'm going to be married. Then I said, okay, the woman I marry is going to be a special woman.
Okay.
Good Lord bless me with a special woman. We've been married for almost 17 years.
Now, I want to finish up with this concept of welfare culture, and I want to understand from you. Are you saying that there's potentially generations of families using welfare and living in a divided state from generation to generation?
Absolutely, because when you live in generational welfare breeds dependency, and that dependency breeds a sense of victimhood. You see, when you're dependent on the government, you believe that you can't get ahead because of outside forces that are beyond your control.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there's this victimhood mentality in the black community that, in my humble opinion, is one of the largest impediments to black American progress, even 50 years after the civil rights movement.
What is victimhood mentality?
Basically, the victimhood mentality states that in America, a black person can only advance so far, can only reach so far in terms of achieving various goals in his or her life. But because of white racism or a legacy of slavery, a black person will not achieve his or her full potential because of that. That's the victimhood mentality. And as a result of that victimhood mentality, especially in the school system, that gives a lot of black school children an out or an excuse not to apply themselves academically. And again, I experienced this, but I had to fight against it. And in
Mhm.
fighting against it, again, I caught a lot of flack as a result because I basically was the antithesis of that mentality. I basically bust through that. I said, no, I don't care if it doesn't matter if I'm black. It doesn't matter if I grew up poor. I have, the way that I saw it, I have the same opportunities as anyone else to better myself, and I'm going to use the educational system that I have access to in order to do that.
So when you talk about a generational reality of a victimhood mentality, how do we how do we counteract that? How do we make our mentalities in our communities a better thing? And the reason why I ask you that is because we live in a really big world today, and there could be millions of people out there in the world who share similar thoughts that you had when you were growing up, and in a society like we have today where there's so many different opportunities to learn, we have to make this platform one of those. And so, as best as we can, I'd like to spend the next 30 to 40 minutes talking about solutions to what you have seen as a victim type mentality, because that way we get the very most value add out of a life like yours, which you've used to make a difference. So how do we break the generational reality of welfare in our communities?
Well, the first thing that we need to do is realize that children do better in two-parent married households with a mother
Okay.
and father. That's the
Mhm.
number one thing. Our prisons, we have to realize our prison system is overpopulated with fatherless children who grew up without fathers, regardless of race. So, number one, raise children in two-parent married households. Secondly,
Well,
we
hold on. We got a whole hour to talk, so let's take it slow. What if a mother and father they intend to be together, but they can't be together? What do they do?
well, you know what? Every situation is different,
Hmm.
and from and this is just my opinion. Granted, like I said, every situation is different. However, before two people decide to bring a child into this world, they need to think about and really, really consider the long term consequences and repercussions of that. Are they going to work together to raise this child in the best environment possible? Are they going to allow the other parent to be a parent? Because just because a person may not be the best spouse doesn't mean he or she is not a good parent.
How do you let the other parent be a parent? What do you mean by that?
Because you have to acknowledge that, hey, you know what? I'm just going to give an example. Hey, say for example, if I had a girlfriend, we have a child together, and our relationship doesn't work out, we have to be big enough to set aside our personal differences and say, you know what? We're not together, but that is my child's mother. Our child needs the both of us.
Okay.
Our child needs the both of us to raise him or her to be the best possible version that he or she can be. We have to put our personal differences aside, okay,
Okay.
and focus on the well being of this beautiful child that we both created. So co
Okay.
parent is a key to success.
Okay. All right. And then you talked about the fact that we have a lot of men in jail who were also fatherless growing up.
That is correct. And studies have shown that the vast majority of men who are populating the prison system, regardless of race, are the products of single parent homes who grew up without a father in the home. In a lot of cases, those young men who grew up without fathers is not. There are some cases where, yeah, the father abandoned the family, but there are also many cases where the mother did not want the father in the home because that would have prevented her from collecting welfare. And
Wow.
I think this is an ugly truth that we don't talk about, but the truth is what it is. Okay. A lot of single mothers will use the legal system, the court system, to remove their children's father out of the home because they have this twisted mentality that they can do it all by themselves, when the fact of the matter is they can't do it all by themselves without the government's help.
Wow.
So that's, again, an ugly reality, but it's a reality nonetheless.
So I've been in barbershop conversations, and I'm going to play some of the roles of people I've engaged in barbershop. I'm going to say some of those things to you tonight, and I like your honest reaction. What would you say if I told you that all does not apply to and everybody is not living in a single parent household, everybody's not on welfare, and just because you grew up in a two-family household doesn't prevent you from choosing a life of crime? What if my perspective is that the people that you're talking about is a small percentage of our community?
Well, to that, I would say, first off, you're absolutely right that not all black people, not all black children are growing up in single parent homes. There's a large African American middle class, especially here in the Washington, D.C. area. And granted, children who grow up in stable two parent homes are more likely to be contributing members to society, law abiding citizens. You're absolutely right. That doesn't stop someone from deciding to break the law, to commit a crime. We all have free will, and you know what? Hey, actions have consequences. I mean, you have a lot of trust fund babies who go to drugs and violence and do all kinds of bad, dastardly deeds. But when you look back, they're like, oh my God, wait, his parents were rich. Yeah, but you know what? Actions have consequences. He or she made the choice to do ABC, and guess what? They have to pay the piper on that.
Right.
But given the African American community, I mean, you have to look at that stat. 75% of black children in America are born out of wedlock, and over 60% of those children are raised in single parent, fatherless households where the single mother has multiple children by multiple men. In any other community, they would have a serious community meeting about that. But in the African American community, it's seen as normal. That's not normal. That's dysfunctional. That is a cancer on our culture. Okay. That is Martin Luther King Jr. took a bullet for. That's not what Malcolm X died for. That's something that we as black people, we need to have an honest discussion about that. Leave the white man out of it. Leave the legacy of slavery out of it, and we need to get our own house in order.
So you don't think that we should have welfare at all in our communities?
I feel that welfare, as it was originally intended, is important to help people who are temporarily down on their luck, who are temporarily in a bad spot economically, widows, orphans, even single men who, like I said, in this economy, for example, or back during the Great Recession 10 years ago, I was in that spot myself, who lost their jobs through no fault of their own, who were basically knocked on their backs. If they need a temporary pick-me-up financially while they're getting themselves back on their feet, looking for jobs, bettering their skills, building a business, etc. As long as it's temporary, I don't have a problem with it. Okay. The problem is the welfare state has turned into an intergenerational lifestyle that has yielded horrible consequences disproportionately for the African American community.
So what you're talking about is a lack of accountability when it comes to character development on the part of men and women who grow up here in America. And like you said, it's not just African Americans. It's pretty much any and everybody who happens to be caught up in an intergenerational or a one generational welfare lifestyle. And so what that said to me is that we need a 100% more robust effort to teach men how to be men who are providers, who are reliable, and who are sustainable, as well as a way to teach women how to be adults who are reliable, sustainable, and overall conducive to the best outcomes in our community. What do you think about that?
I could not agree more. And again, it starts in the home. I'll give you an example. See, my wife is from Morocco,
Okay.
North Africa, in the Arab world, and our son is half black, half Moroccan. And what's wonderful about my wife is that she grew up in a two-parent home, and she was very close to her father, and that's very, very key. She had a wonderful relationship with her father. He was an older gentleman. He's no longer with us, but because of her relationship with her father, that molded her into a young lady of character, of integrity, of morals. There are things that she would not tolerate in terms of being treated, so on and so forth. That's very, very key. If you look at the dating patterns of a lot of people, okay, specifically women, if you see them bouncing from man to man, getting in one bad relationship after the other, you'll notice a common thread: daddy issues. Either the father wasn't in their life, or the father was abusive or unavailable, something along the lines. There's an emotional void that has been left open because of a lack of a father, and a lot of women choose to fill that void by getting in toxic relationships. See, everything starts in the home. I mean, when you
So what traditions do we need to institute in order to create a healing environment in our homes? What traditions do we need to institute in order to heal hundreds of thousands of young people who are living in homes right now, which you, like you say you grew up in, are dysfunctional and they're lopsided because they don't have both parents? What can somebody do today that they didn't do yesterday that would begin to make things better?
you know what, as a parent, whether you're a mother or a father, you can tell your child, "Hey, I love you. You're the best thing that ever happened to me. I got your back. My job is to make you, my child, into a better version of me. This is how I raised my son." And you shower that child with love, you shower that child with the appropriate amount of discipline, you show them different opportunities, but most importantly, you show them your love by just being there. It's not about how much stuff you buy them, it's not about how much money you spend on them. Children, more than anything else, they just need their parents to be there. They just need to know that mom and dad are there for them if and when they need them. And as parents, we need to set the proper example because our children watch us. They pay attention to us. Every word that we say, everything that we do. That old adage, "do as I say, not as I do," that doesn't work because children pattern themselves after us, their parents. So that gives us an additional responsibility as parents and adults in the community to govern ourselves accordingly.
So, can you give me one tradition that we need to start in our families that will create a healing environment?
A tradition, I would say something simple like having dinner together as a family, talking to your children about how their day went, and not necessarily giving a solution if they have a problem. Sometimes your children just want to talk so that you will listen to them.
Right,
Sometimes they want you to listen to them. You
right.
don't really have to have the answer at the time. They
Mhm.
just want you to be there. Like my son Luther. I mean, you know, he could be play. He has his own room, but whether he's playing with his toys or on his iPad playing computer games, he likes to be close to his dad. He likes to be close to me. And I realized this a long time ago. And he's not necessarily bothering me or anything. He just likes to be close to his old man. And
Right.
I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. And I picked up on that. I said, you know what? You know what? That's my boy. He just wants to be close to his dad.
Hmm.
Look, of course, he can be close to me. Sometimes our kids, they just want to be close to us, even
Right.
if it's off camera.
Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking to Dutch Martin today. This man is very passionate about the realities of young people who grow up in communities around America, communities just like yours. He's talking about some of those realities today, and we're not finished though. We'll be right back after this brief message with more of a dynamic story from Mr. Dutch Martin. America's Next Motivator. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern. Tuesday and Thursday at 10 a.m. Eastern. America's Next Motivator. Hosted by me, Cedric Riley, and sponsored by our good friends at 4D Healthware. And we're back. We are off to a power spot here. We're unloading some things that maybe needed to have been talked about for quite some time, and we're going to get out onto a positive end of this conversation. And I'd like to start off things by asking you, at what point did you deal with the trauma that you experienced growing up?
I'm glad you asked that, Cedric. It's funny because let me take you back to 2013. So my family and I are just coming out of the the global recession. I had just gotten a new job. Our family had just moved to a new place that we were renting. And our son was Luther was about 2 years old. So things were slowly but surely getting back to normal. Emotionally, I was a wreck. I was an emotional wreck.
Why?
Well, because I had started a business during the recession that didn't take off. We were broke by the time our son was a newborn. We lived up in Las Vegas for about a year. I couldn't get things going there, so we had to throw all of our things in storage, and I had to use my last unemployment check to buy a one-way ticket to fly my family and me here back to the Washington, D.C. area, where the economy was a lot stronger here. So fast forward here in about finally 2013, I finally landed a position, full-time position, started working. But it's funny because then I said, okay, I need to get back into shape because I was horribly out of shape.
Okay.
I started working out, and then I took a yoga class at my local gym.
What is yoga?
Yoga is an ancient practice that comes from India, and it basically uses deep breathing. It combines a series of poses called postures combined with deep breathing, and it opens up all kinds of channels in the body. It basically facilitates that mind, body, spirit connection.
Okay.
And it's a wonderful practice. A lot of people call it stretching, but it's much more than that. It's a lot more than that. The word yoga, it means union, where you're basically bringing your mind, body, and soul into the same plane, into balance. And it's a beautiful practice. I always thought of yoga as just another form of exercise. I didn't judge it for anything like that. But when I took my first few yoga classes, now I come from a weightlifting background. I grew up in Flex magazine. I wanted to be buff, that sort of thing. But you're like north of 40, you can't be squatting 300 pounds for reps like you were when you were in your 20s. Because the body just isn't gonna tolerate that. So I took a yoga class. And I said, oh, my God, this is the first form of exercise where I felt exhausted and exhilarated at the same time.
Wow.
It felt amazing. I wasn't sore. I didn't feel any pain or anything like that. I said, I need to do this more. And it's funny because I had a history of back problems. My back was bothering me. I had all kinds of joint issues. Mm. You know what? I'm going to keep doing this.
Right.
One thing led to another. I started practicing yoga more. I cleaned up my eating habits.
When you say you cleaned up your eating habits, what did you do exactly?
I started looking into like a whole foods plant-based diet. I had
Okay.
to cut out a lot of sugars in my diet and eat more fruits and vegetables, leafy greens, whole grains, that sort of thing.
Mhm.
I dropped a ton of weight, a ton. And I said, okay, this is working.
And Darren, before you even move forward, I want to bring it back to the conversation that we were having toward the beginning. And I want to say the things that you experienced in your life, your formative years, and then as you got older, became a young adult, and you realized the level of dysfunction that was among you, in a sense, it separated your mentality from your body. They were in two different places because you had a level of trauma here that you were holding, but your physical body had to move forward and find a way to grow and succeed. Is that correct?
You're absolutely right. And here's what happened. I'm in yoga teacher training. I decided to become a certified yoga instructor. And during the teacher training practice, during a teacher training session, we had just watched a DVD on people who go and teach yoga in prisons to death row inmates. And it comes during yoga teacher training, you get to the point where you start bonding with the other students who are in the program. You start basically dumping a lot of emotional stuff that we all have.
Mm.
Safe space. The wonderful thing about yoga is that it provides you with that safe space to release all of that emotional baggage. On this particular day, I said, you know what? In front of a room full of strangers, I said, this is what I'm dealing with. I found out some years ago that my mother lied to me. My entire family lied to me. I'm the product of an extramarital affair that my family would have still kept from me if I didn't find out about it. And I'm hurt by that. Okay. It destroyed whatever trust I had in my family. Next thing you know, the tears started flowing and just I was bawling my eyes out. But then after that, it was like a 100-pound chain had been detached from my soul. It was
Wow.
the first step for me toward that healing process. And how the yoga community embraced me after that, it made me realize, I said, you know what? We all have a story and we need to tell our story because you never know. Somebody might hear your story and say, you know what? Oh my God, I'm going through the same thing.
Right. That's right. And so as you speak, what I'm hearing is that we could use yoga in millions of communities around the world as a mean of elevating your overall state of well-being because you're relieving stress and as a way of bonding with one another. Families can use yoga as a way of relieving stress. Families can use yoga as a way of bonding with one another. Even if you don't have both parents in the home, what I'm hearing you say is that yoga can be a healer and yoga can be a energy cleaner for our communities.
Absolutely. Because here's the great thing about yoga. Here's a misconception. You have to be flexible. You have to be able to put your foot behind your head.
Right.
It's true. You do not have to be flexible. You just have to be present.
Wow. Talk about that.
Present.
Okay.
I tell my students, I say, as long as you're breathing, you're doing it right.
Wow.
We'll poses during the class. I say, modify a pose if you have to, amplify it, take it to the next level if you want to. But as long as you're breathing, you're doing it right. This is how I was taught. I teach my students, and this is how I was taught. You're good enough just as you are. Physically, mentally, emotionally. You come to my yoga class, no judgment. Okay? My job as a yoga teacher is to make sure that by the end of my class, you feel like $1,000,000, no matter where you are, physically, mentally, or emotionally. I want to make sure that by the time you finish my yoga class, you feel like you can take on any challenge, any problem, any obstacle in your life. And that's why so many students keep coming back to my classes because my job is to serve them in that capacity and to basically bless others the way yoga has blessed me.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. So you mean to tell me that you don't have to be in tip-top shape to get started in yoga? Should people be scared of yoga?
No, people should not be scared of yoga because, again, there's a modification for every pose. And The great thing about it is that yoga is a great complement to every other form of exercise. I'll give you an example. A lot of people who come to yoga are like runners. They have a runner's background.
Okay.
You especially here in the Washington D.C. area, you see people jogging and running all the time. Well, that builds a lot of tension and a lot of tightness in the hips and hamstrings. And a lot of people come to yoga to relieve that tension in their hips and hamstrings, and they find it's a wonderful adjunct to their overall exercise routine. I still lift weights from time to time. I still do body weight training. Sometimes I'll do only yoga, but yoga is a great way to stretch and loosen the muscles and get that lactic acid flowing through and get all those necessary juices flowing. And most importantly, it calms your mind because when you're in a yoga class, when you're practicing yoga, you can't think about anything else.
Mm.
Point. It ain't got to look pretty. That's not the point. That's
Right.
not the point. I mean, whatever feelings or emotions that come up on your mat when you're practicing yoga, we say, let them come out. Let
Right.
it, okay? Maybe those feelings need to come out. Maybe you've been holding on to those feelings for far too long and you need to release them. In my class, by all means do so. And you know that if you, whatever it is that you release in my class, it will happen in a safe space where you are loved, you are appreciated, and you are encouraged to come back.
Mhm.
That's
Now, people can contact you at your website, thedutchmartin.com, about yoga classes.
yes, thedutchmartin.com. I'm also on Twitter at DAMartin1906. I'll put that in the chat. DA, that's my Twitter handle.
Okay. You said 1906?
Yep, that's
Okay.
my handle. Um, my ultra is under my alter ego, the exterior minister. So, but that's
Okay.
my Twitter handle, and that's my website. Feel free to contact me by those two platforms, and on Instagram, it's the underscore Dutch Martin
Okay.
on Instagram as well. So that's my Instagram handle.
Okay. All right. And now, so I'm understanding that yoga can be a way to heal our families. I want to know, at what point did you start speaking? When did you start doing speaking engagements and sharing your story? And were you sharing your story when you did these speaking engagements?
Oh man, that's a great question. You know what? One of my favorite motivational speakers is Les Brown, and about 5 or 6 years ago, I was driving to work, and I started listening to a lot of motivational content, motivational YouTube messages on my way to work. And Les Brown is one of my favorites. He has a quote from Dr. Howard Thurman, who was a 20th century theologian. The quote goes like this: the ideal situation for a man or woman to die is to be surrounded by their loved ones, praying for them as they cross over. But imagine for a moment you're lying on your deathbed, and standing around your deathbed are the ghosts of the dreams, the talents, the ideas, the gifts that were given to you by life itself, but for whatever reason, you never acted on any of them. You never wrote that book. You never pursued that passion. You never achieved that goal. And as you're lying there taking your last breath, they're staring back at you with large, angry eyes, saying, we came to you, and only you could have given us life. And now we must die with you forever. And the question is, when you die, what dreams, what talents, what gifts will die with you? When I heard that quote, I literally had to pull my car over to the side of the road. The tears were flowing down my face. And I realized, I said, you know what? My gift is public speaking. I'm wasting it by not using it. I need to use this gift. So from there, I joined Toastmasters International.
What's Toastmasters?
Toastmasters Toastmasters is an organization that was founded in the 1920s by a gentleman named Ralph Smedley. And the goal of Toastmasters is to help people become not only better speakers, but better leaders. It's more than just helping people overcome their fear of public speaking. You develop great public speaking and leadership skills. It's a great organization, over 366,000 members of Toastmasters in 140 countries all over the world. I joined Toastmasters in 2016. It's been great. Toastmasters sponsors the international speech contest from the club level all the way to the world championships of public speaking. I started entering and winning that. And then our local chapter, the National Speakers Association, they have what's called a Speaker Academy, which is a 15-month program where you learn the business of speaking. So I enrolled in the Speaker Academy, graduated from the Speaker Academy in 2018, gave my spotlight speech. That's on my website. And I said, okay, let me take this to the next level. And then I found out that I could become a world-class speaking coach under Craig Valentine. Excuse me, the world-class speaking coach program was created by Craig Valentine. He's a speaker, trainer, and coach, and he won the 1999 Toastmasters World Champion of Public Speaking. He partnered with an internet marketing guru and the best-selling author, Mitch Myerson, to create what's called the World Class Speaking Coach Program. It's a 12-week program to help people become expert speakers by learning these incredible tools to help you become so world-class in your presentations and speeches, and to basically take your personal and professional speaking and presentation skills to the next level. So I became a certified world-class speaking coach. And I speak in various organizations, Toastmasters, and I've spoken at the Rotary Club, and I absolutely love it. My thing is, and as a yoga instructor, it's absolutely amazing. I mean, because as a teacher, I realized, I said, you know what? I'm not just putting my students through a set sequence of poses. I want to use my voice to motivate, to inspire, and to connect with my students and to let them know that, hey, anything is possible as long as you believe in yourself.
Without a doubt. I'm going to ask you a series of questions right now, and I want you to take this walk with me. Do you think it's important to pull up people who are growing up in situations similar to the one that you grew up in?
I do believe, yes, that's absolutely that's absolutely essential to give back.
Sure.
Example, and for those who want to learn from your example, by all means, have that helping hand available to them.
Sure. And then do you think that it's important for everybody to tell their story? Does everybody need to tell their story?
Everybody has a story. Everyone. I think when you tell your story, you connect with people because, again, we're all walking through this journey called life. We're all perfectly imperfect. You never know. Your story can help someone else who might be afraid to tell his or her story. But once they hear yours, a light bulb might go off and they'll say, oh my God, wow, somebody understands me. Somebody gets me. It's amazing the connections that I have made just by overcoming the fear and the guilt that comes with telling my story. I said, no, this is my story. I'm going to own it. I'm not ashamed of it. In fact, I'm breaking the curse of fatherlessness that I was born into by being a great husband, a great father to my son, by setting the example of being a family man and a provider, by being a good citizen, upstanding member of my community, by teaching yoga, by sharing the benefits of yoga to my community, by speaking, by being active in my Toastmasters club. I'm doing all these things so that my son, Luther, he has a blueprint and he can take what I have done and take it to the next level when he's older. And then when he has a family, he can teach them those things and they can take it to the next level and on and on. That's how we not only break cycles, but how we create positive, powerful, generational cycles of success and family.
So what you're saying is that we can change the overall look and feel of our communities by encouraging people to take their journey in life by the horns and then share that story with other people. Are you saying that sharing your story can liberate you from the oppression of a traumatic past?
Oh my God, yes, absolutely, most definitely.
And what would you say? What would you say to somebody who says, I don't have a story? What would you say to them?
I say, no, we all have a story. You just haven't thought about it. Take a look at your life. Sit down and really think about all the things that have happened in your life. The good, the bad, the indifferent, your successes, your failures, the mistakes you've made. Don't be afraid to look at the mistakes you've made because we've all made them. We learn more from our mistakes than we do from our successes. That's a hard lesson I had to learn myself. We learn
Wow.
from our failures more than we learn from our successes. Every Hall of Famer, every champion will tell you that.
Right.
And it was because of my failures and my mistakes that have made me the man that I am today. I'm a lot stronger, I'm wiser, I'm more astute to things, and I'm much more sympathetic.
Right. So
Learn from your mistakes.
sure. So for all our people out there in every community across America today, be reminded that there might have been shortcomings or just outright failures in your families leading up to you, but those failures are there for you to learn from and for you to share what you learn with yourself and for other people. So look at your situation in its frailties, in its brokenness, and glean the lesson to be learned from it. So it's not the end of the world because you live in a single parent household. It's not the end of the world because you're on welfare, even if this is the third or fourth generation that your family's been on welfare. It's not the end of the world if you've never met your mother, if you've never met your father, and it's not the end of the world if you grew up in foster care. But you have an opportunity, which becomes a responsibility to learn from what happened, grow from it, and then share that growth with other people.
And most definitely. And one of the things that helped me is that when you find something that you're passionate about doing, something that you love to do,
Mhm.
you devote as much time as you can in that because when you find your passion and something that you're good at, Ken Robinson, a British educator, he wrote an excellent book called The Element, where he describes the element as that intersection between your personal passion and your innate ability. Basically, something that you're good at and something that you love to do, you focus on that. Not only will you change your biology, and you can also change the world.
Sure.
You don't necessarily have to be a graduate, or or who knows, you might be a genius. Albert Einstein, found his element when he was a child. He was very inquisitive about how the world worked and how the universe worked, and now he's basically immortalized.
Right.
Eric Clapton didn't know his father. He dropped out of school, but he's known as one of the greatest blues guitar players in the world because he found his musical element at a young age. I
Right.
mean, Steve Harvey. Oh my God, he's from my hometown of Cleveland. Steve Harvey's a hometown boy. Got nothing but love for Steve Harvey.
Right.
He dropped out of high school, had bounced from job to job. He went into a comedy club, absolutely killed it at amateur night. He said when he drove home, he had tears in his eyes. The young lady who was driving with him said, "Why are you crying? You just won $50. It's just $50." He said, "No, you don't understand. I was born tonight. I finally found what I am good at. I finally found what my life's calling is.
Right.
His element."
And to that point, I want you to talk about Dutch. I want you to talk about the role that rebirth plays in your life when you have to overcome things. What role does rebirth play in resurrecting our communities?
Man, oh my gosh. You know, we all evolve. I mean, as our societies evolve and as individuals, as human beings, we evolve. I think personal reinvention is a very important step toward personal development. And again, it all boils down to finding things that you're passionate about. The things that we like now might not be the things that we like, next year, next week, next month. So be open to trying to new opportunities, to trying new things,
Mhm.
seeing new ways of thinking. You might find something that really speaks to you, and
Right.
that's the genesis of your rebirth, of your personal reinvention. I'm a full believer in that.
Right. Okay. We've had a great time today. I wish we had more because you are so full of insights and your energy is just infectious. The way that you are willing to talk about things that need to be put out there and need to be unpacked. So kudos to you. I want to know as we wrap up, what is survival to you?
Man, survival is adapting. You have to adapt. You got to make changes. You have to adjust. And don't take it personally. When life knocks you down, don't take it personally. It is what it is. Just adapt. I mean, Les Brown says when life knocks you down, try to land on your back because if you can look up, you can get up. Or maybe all you just need to do is roll out of the way. You know, adapt, adjust, get better, work harder, and keep moving forward.
And what is success to you?
Success is finding your passion and turning it into a way of life for you that not only puts food on the table, that provides for your family, but that lets you know that you are living your dream, you're living your purpose. Every time you are working on something that you love to do, that you are living, breathing, and working in your element, that is an affirmation to the universe that this is what you were created to do. This is why you went through all those trials and tribulations to bring you right here to do this thing that you are doing. This is why you were put on this earth.
And final question, what is greatness to you?
Greatness is helping people, being of service, making a person's day better than that person's day was before they met you, making a person's life better than it was before they crossed your path. That's what greatness is.
Dutch Martin, you have you've had a tremendous life and you've made the best of it. I want to commend you today. I want to give you your respect while you're still alive and tell you that you're doing a great thing. I think that yoga is an awesome thing to do in our communities. And you, Dutch Martin, are one of America's next motivators. Welcome to the Pride Empowerment Network. And I've had a great episode with you today, and I appreciate you being here.
Thank you, brother. Blessings to you and your family. Namaste.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in today. Be sure to come back here tomorrow. Remember, with every episode of America's Next Motivator, there's something here for you. Come by and pick it up.